All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the fourth Passion to Profit community workshop. I will share my screen and we will get going. All right. So before we dive into the content, I will give you a little bit of a background on me for those of you who may not know me, as well as a background on kind of what I do outside of these community workshops. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Caitlin Hensey. I am the founder of Passion to Profit Consulting. I have been doing it for about a year now, but there was a little bit of a transition between doing it as a side hustle and doing it full time. I have been doing these community workshops since last November. It's something that I really enjoy and hopefully is a really good way to help everyone come into a space where you can be present and understand some new techniques or recommendations for ways that you can get a little bit creative about how you develop and implement your business strategy, and then give you some pretty tangible action steps to help you weave some of the practices into your day-to-day work, no matter where you are or what role you play or the type of business that you are. So my main purpose with Passion to Profit Consulting is to help businesses both achieve their strategic goals and be successful from a business standpoint and also create a thriving culture. So I work with teams to do strategy development and activation work, as well as change management, and intertwine the two with a blend of human-centered design or design thinking, which we will get into a little bit today, to use customer data, whether that's internal or external customers, to help create a strategy that not only will help you succeed as a business, but will also help you maintain strong customer satisfaction, which ultimately, as we all know, we all work with customers, is the key to success. So we will go ahead and dive into the content. You are welcome to ask any questions, put comments in the chat. If I don't see a hand raise or a comment, please just come off mute and shout it out. Sometimes it's hard to pay attention to all the different aspects of the screen. I want to make this as interactive and useful for all of you as possible. As we get started, we're going to begin with a little game of virtual hand raises. So I'll be asking you a series of questions and you can raise your virtual hand, or if that's too complicated, just raise your physical hand on the screen. And we will kind of get a pulse of where each of us are at in using customer data with our developing our strategic goals. So the first piece of this is raise your hand, physical or virtual hand, if you have strategic goals for this year, either for yourself, for your team, or for your business as a whole. Okay. Most of us have strategic goals, okay, of some sort. Now, leave your hand raised if those goals have both quantitative, so numerical, data-based, and qualitative, observational measures of success. Okay, so we have a few people that have both the quantitative and qualitative data. Now continue to leave your hand raised if other stakeholders aside from your leadership team were involved in crafting those strategic goals. Did you get other people's input when you developed them? Okay. And finally, leave your hand raised if you have shared your strategic goals and measures of success with the employees that you have in your organization, as well as your customers. Has anyone done that? All right. No hands. And that is a-okay, because that is what we will learn how to do a little bit more today. And you may be questioning why we need to do some of these things or what the purpose is. We'll get to that. This is a little bit of a different way to approach strategic planning. So if something doesn't make sense, or if you need a clarification point or something seems a little bit off, please feel free, again, raise your hand, put a comment in the chat, or just speak up. So the first piece that we will start with is the critical components of a strategic goal. In order to be successful, a strategic goal really needs to have two basic parts. It has to be aligned to growing the business or growing your team. Now, this can apply if you're a solopreneur, if you're a team leader, if you're a team member, or if you actually own an entire company and have employees that you have as part of your team. If it's aligned to business growth, that is a way that will help keep the team and your stakeholders motivated in order to achieve that. And then the second piece is that it needs to be aligned to your customer needs. If we develop our strategic goals in an insular way, in which we think as leaders of the team or as our business, that we know what our customers need, we may be anywhere from 30 to 60% accurate on that. But there is a gap between what we think they need and what they actually might need. And so in order for our strategic goals to be successful, they do need to be aligned to our customers' needs. Otherwise, we'll continue to operate with all of these fires popping up of customer needs this, and we have to shift gears and shift away from our strategic goal work in order to meet the customer's needs. Or we're going along and hopefully trying to achieve our strategic goals. We're growing our business. We're seeing success that way. And yet our customer satisfaction isn't improving if we're trying to improve it, or it takes a dip, or maybe it just stays steady. So we have that weird conflict between we're successful as a business, our customers may not be as satisfied as we want them to be. So these are the two critical components of any sort of strategic goal, no matter who you are, what type of business you run, or the role that you play. And there's a couple of reasons why we really need to start thinking about strategic planning differently. One of the very first reasons, and this I will say is somewhat controversial. I have certainly had healthy debates with people who disagree with me on this point. But from my opinion and in my experience, multi-year strategic plans really do not work anymore. There is too much that happens on a year-to-year basis, quarter-to-quarter basis, even month-to-month basis, to try to anticipate what we want to achieve 3 or 5 years down the road. So this is why it is really important to start breaking our strategic plan up into shorter segments. So rather than trying to think, okay, let's set this goal and we're going to try to achieve it by the end of 2030 or by the end of even 2026, 2027, we really focus on the year that we're in currently. We still might have that long-term vision, and we may have an aspiration for what we want our company to look and feel like down the road, but we focus on the year that we're in currently and give ourselves the permission to iterate and change and shift up how we actually meet those strategic goals based on what we learn throughout the year. So that's the first year. Those multi-year strategic plans in the chaotic, volatile, ever-changing, fast-paced environment that most of our businesses are in really just don't work anymore. The second piece is that customers and employees are asking to be involved in our strategic planning process. From an internal employee standpoint, or if the majority of your customers, in a sense, are internal customers, meaning you serve a team within your organization, they want to see how they will benefit from your strategic goals, and they want to see how their work will align to the strategic goals. So in traditional settings, many times leaders got into a room, created strategic goals that were based on either the company's vision, or maybe a parent company had some goals that you took and kind of morphed in for your team. And then we communicated them downstream to our employees. Now, that could potentially get people's interest, but the best and most effective way to get that interest is by forming a community or a group of people that can create those goals together and then align the work that they do to those goals. And then additionally, being transparent with your customers and letting them into the process will also ensure that, back to that second piece I talked to in the beginning, that those strategic goals meet that customer alignment. And then finally, the last piece is our mental health is really taking a hit. I probably can't go one day without seeing some post on LinkedIn or getting some email or seeing a podcast or a blog about how people are burnt out, too stressed, overwhelmed. Mental health's a huge issue. We all have anxiety. We're all overworking. We know that. It's a fact. It's been happening for years, and I think it's continuing to get worse because many people have this belief that we have to do everything in order to be successful. Strategic goal setting asks us to make very intentional trade-offs about what we are not going to do in order to be better and stronger at what we really commit to. So, in order to do this effectively, we do have to be willing to say no to things and to say, this year, we're not going to focus on this as a business. And if we do that, we are able to be more successful if we have our strategic goals aligned to our customers and our business growth, and we actually know what our customers and employees want in setting our goals. So this is why we need to do strategic planning a little bit differently. Has anyone had an experience in your organization where maybe you've set goals and haven't necessarily been effective in achieving them based on the fact that they don't have some of these components? See a few head nods.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to, trying to set a goal or a strategy that I think makes sense, but
Mhm.
maybe it's not what the customers are looking for. The
Yes.
push versus
Yes.
pull, right?
Exactly. So we're going to go through a couple of techniques that will help you weave some of the human-centered design concepts into your strategic planning process. So the first piece, for those of you who may or may not know much about design thinking, we'll talk about what it is and how we can use it. So at its core, design thinking asks us to make three distinct shifts. And this is, in my experience, where the magic really happens. The first piece is around your mindset. We need to start embracing failure and vulnerability and being transparent about where we fall short and using that as very valuable information to shift the way we work, what we do, the actions that we take on a day-to-day basis in pursuit of our goals, rather than trying to just try harder and put more effort to something if we're behind. Just putting more effort to something when it's clearly not working is not going to necessarily lead to success. The second piece is a shift in our process. So making it very iterative and evolving rather than the typical set it and forget it strategic goal planning exercise where we get into a room, there's a strategic planning offsite, there's, a long, probably longer 2 to even 8-hour team meeting where we set our goals and then we review them if we're lucky, maybe on a quarterly basis. In most cases, I've seen it even be annually. We start thinking about this and talking about it on a weekly or even daily basis. And then the third piece, the third major shift is around people rather than just involving leadership team, senior leaders, people, who think like you or have tenure in the company or whatever, whoever these people are that you typically involve in your strategic goals. We intentionally involve people from all different stakeholder groups and get some controversial opinions to then converge on some key themes to really understand what does my business or what does our team really need to focus on. And another little tidbit about design thinking or human-centered design, it does have a couple of differences between the design thinking process and then some of our normal kind of typical process improvement or process steps. We work in small iterative phases, similar to the agile methodology versus one large rollout. So rather than working on our team on this big project and then rolling it out once it's all done, we actually expose pieces of the project, the task, the new piece of technology that we're working on to people throughout the process so they can give feedback and help shape our design. we're designing people we're designing with some people versus for them. And we're increasing time on the front end in the discovery process rather than the building process. For the clients that I work with, this is probably the most difficult shift to make because it feels like we're moving very slow at the beginning. And I always tell them that up front. It's going to feel like we're doing a lot of data gathering, interviewing, talking to people, understanding, empathizing. And if we're not used to doing that, it can have the sense that it's a waste of time. I promise that it will add value in the back end, no matter what you're doing, whether it's building strategic goals, building a project, building a new piece of software. The empathy gathering in the beginning is a critical first step. And then the last piece is you're providing people, it's in some senses, with multiple solutions versus just one final solution. So as we get into the process of goal setting, or the methodology that I enjoy and tend to gravitate to, is objectives and key results methodology, or OKRs. If you have heard of it and use OKRs, awesome. If you don't, no problem. I do meet people where they're at. And if we want to use the word goal, metric, task versus objective, key result, initiative, totally fine for the purposes of today, since we're all coming in with probably some different level of knowledge on OKRs. We are going to use those more broad terms, but just know that some of the background that I will give you is based on that OKR methodology. So the first part in the process is, rather than going directly to identifying the goal, you're going to picture your ideal future state. And back to what we mentioned in the beginning, this is not the ideal future state 5 years from now. This is the ideal future state on December 31st of 2024. And you'll ask yourself a couple of questions. What do we want our business or our team to look and feel like at this point in time on December 31st, 2024, if we're doing it for this year? What do we want it to look and feel like? What big milestones do we want to accomplish? And what do we want our customers to say about us or think about us? Or how do we want them to experience us? So these overall aspirational objective statements for the year want to focus on one, impact. So how will you win in your market? Why do you exist? What unique value do you add, or what unique value do you want to add? And then enablement. Since we're doing a more iterative process rather than this multi-year strategic plan, we can really hone in on what do we need to solve first in order to enable future success in other areas. That's a hard piece for some of us to grasp, because a lot of times we think like, true end state, I want to, build this entire new arm of my business and be able to market it to customers and be successful in that. Like, the likelihood of accomplishing that within a year is relatively slim. So maybe at the beginning we have to do some of the less exciting work in that could be, building the framework or testing solutions or talking to people. So that gets to that enablement piece. Some of the tips in this aspect, this kind of first step, is one, talk to your stakeholders, talk to customers, talk to team members, talk to internal people, understand what they want your business to look and feel like, how they want to experience you, what they may not be super satisfied with now, and what they might be expecting or needing or desiring from you. The other piece is allow yourself, especially at this initial stage, to dream uninhibited. Think of the wildest and craziest ideas. Think of the fun, most exciting things that get you and your team really passionate about accomplishing what it is you will be doing or getting to that end. Enable people to throw out all sorts of ideas about what they want the company to look and feel like at the end of the year. And in order to do this well, we need to operate in a psychologically safe environment. So this first piece allows us to shift from stating a specific goal to stating more of a aspirational statement of intent. I will give you an example, and if someone else wants to give one of their examples, we can rework it. But I'll give you an example to help make it a little bit more tangible. So a lot of times people's goals will be to, to accomplish something. So we might say, by the end of the year, I want to improve our 5 core processes and streamline efficiency by 30%, something like that. That is the task. That's what you're going to do. That's hopefully what you're going to accomplish. But for this first step, we really want to take a step back and think about what the outcome is that you will achieve from that. So perhaps it's a efficient and productive workforce, or perhaps it is increased, employee satisfaction or retention because we're not working as long of hours, or it might be increased, customer satisfaction. So our objective statement would be more around creating an environment where employees are efficient and productive and customers are satisfied with the pace at which we operate. It's, usually we take a while to come up with these statements, so that might not be the best version that I've ever had as I'm making it up off my head, but you can kind of see the difference in the shift between I'm going to do this versus this is the value that we're going to add, and this is who we will be at the end of the year. Any questions or thoughts on that first piece, on kind of setting our objectives, setting our ideal end states? It takes a little bit to get used to. So as you move along the process, you'll need to stretch your muscles a little bit. But I do think that it can help get you a little bit more targeted on what you want to achieve long term. Yes, and it is kind of like a vision board, Gwen. Targeted to what you want to achieve long term, and then also engage your team. Yes, go ahead, Nick, if you have a question.
Yeah, so a lot of the times in my work, when I'm trying to implement something that's very similar to this approach, an obstacle that I might run into often is, kind of falls into this the impact step. How will you add unique value? And that immediately brings up reflections of all the experiences I've had with clients who are fearful of kind of trying to be something niche for a very specific type of customer, or a very specific problem or pain point for a customer or for a set of customers. And if there has not been success in the marketplace with this approach or with a focus on this pain point, the client might feel like that's not a good direction to go because there's not any solid proof of concept. And so we, almost always, enable ourselves, the collective, both me and the client, to kind of gear more closely to what's already been done, what's already been proven, what is there a case study that we can kind of follow for KPIs and things like that. So I guess, what do you have? I'm guessing I'm not alone in that experience.
Probably not.
Curious on your thoughts of like how to navigate that kind of response when you're encouraging, your colleagues, your clients to think about a unique thing that does not currently exist, and that the value of being the first to offer it, while it might be challenging and risky, is actually adds another layer of value on it.
Yes, yeah, very good question. And you are definitely not alone in that. This first piece, and this is part of why I love this methodology, is this first piece where you're setting your ideal end state or your objective statement, or if you want to call it the goal, is really the depiction of the future state in a bit of a squishy, intangible way where it's not stating that you have to commit to doing something in particular. So you're stating this ideal end state that could be surrounded by customer satisfaction or increased employee retention, or a collaborative environment. You're using some of the descriptor words that can pull in some of the feelings or the desires that your customers have. So think about what it might look like if their pains were resolved. So like for me, for example, most of my customers come to me saying, we set our strategic goals and we essentially waste tons of time and money doing it because we never actually accomplish them, or our teammates don't understand the purpose of them, or we're trying to accomplish our strategic goals and all these urgent fires keep coming up and we can't actually get to them. So the ideal potentially future state would be an environment where people's work is infused into our company's objectives, or we're aligned to our purpose. So it's more of a very, very high level descriptor state of what might it be like if your customers' pains were eliminated, or if you were able to satisfy them or meet some of their needs. So in this stage, you're not actually saying what you're going to do. You're just saying, let's just picture this kind of ideal, perfect situation. How might people look? What might they feel? How might we be interacting with them? What are some words that we'd want to use to describe our environment? Does that help clarify?
It certainly does, and it makes me eager for the next part, because I'm sure we're going
Yes.
to get closer to that in terms of like
Yes.
what we actually do with these aspirations and these feelings.
Yes, exactly. So the second piece is that you'll want to start creating a working prototype. And this is where you'll have more of a continuously iterative strategic, like the specific goal, the task versus the set it and forget it. So once you start with your objective statement, there is a process that I usually go through with my clients, the teams that I work with, that help set some outcome-based success metrics to help them gauge their progress along the way. But as you're building the specific tasks, the initiatives, the things that you're doing, the new creations you might be making, all of these things that you do on a daily basis, the work that you pursue in order to accomplish your strategic goals or in order to get to that desired end state, you'll first want to kind of build that based on your customer empathy or your employee empathy if you're an internal facing organizational team. So by collecting that data, you understand what people need. You have a pulse on the market, and it doesn't guarantee that you'll be successful the first time, but it at least allows you to have a better understanding of what people are expecting of you or what they're looking for you to deliver. And then you ask how your first iteration of the solution resonates with your customers and employees. So you test it with them throughout the way. So that first ideal end state vision is staying constant throughout likely the entire year. It may even repeat into a second year if you do that. But the goal, the specific tasks that you're doing are shifting based on the response of the market. So you might think initially, I need to develop this one piece of software that allows companies to merge their email data with the data that they're getting from Zoom and have kind of like a one-stop shop to be able to search the data that comes in from their email and that comes in from like chat messages or conversations in Zoom. You might build something that's like a rough testing working prototype, and then you may find, oh, actually, this isn't truly serving or solving the customer's pain points or their needs and desires. So then we go back and we rework it a little bit. So rather than your overall goal being, I'm going to develop this software platform that helps team members integrate Zoom data with email data, you're saying we're going to create a efficient and cohesive environment for employees to work. And then how you do that is shifting based on your testing, your data gathering, and integrating some of those design thinking concepts where you're getting feedback from people on a frequent basis into your goal setting process. So that's how we get more tangible. But the key piece to this is that we shift this and we revisit what it is we're doing in pursuit of our goals based on how we're getting responses from the people that we serve or from our employees. In one of my other sessions, or when I do work with people, I have I'll call it a somewhat structured 5-step process for goal setting. So this is more of the theory. And when I work with teams, I'll actually take you through an exercise for creating your objective statement, developing your measures of success, your outcome-based measures of success, qualitative and quantitative, deciding the work that your team actually needs to do in order to accomplish that, and then integrating some of those frequent touch points into already existing team meetings or your operating cadence in order to shift what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis in pursuit of that initial end state. But all of this is basically laying the foundation for how we use design thinking in order to continuously adjust the work that we're doing to get to that end state. So before I move forward into some of the other components around the people, I'll touch on kind of 3 basic qualities that make for an amazing strategic goal. One is that it's aspirational yet realistic. We want it to get people excited and engaged, but we also want it to be realistic in the fact that people aren't going to read it and say, there's no way that our company is ever going to do that. So I'm not going to buy it and I'm not going to engage. That initial objective statement does represent a statement of intent. So a good test is that it doesn't start with an action verb. It's not what it's not what you're going to do. Those pieces come within the tasks, the initiatives that align up to the strategic goal. It's who we're going to be, what the environment's going to look like, how we're going to interact with customers, with our employees, the descriptor words that will be true if we end up, making progress that we hope we're going to make. And then the kind of bonus here is that it does pull in language from your vision, values, and cultural attributes. This one is specifically important if you are a team member working for a larger organization, or if you are maybe a smaller organization that's owned by a parent company or a private equity company that has some say in your strategic goals. We don't want to, go way off the target. So being able to pull in some of those that language creates that through line between, okay, here's what, big top goals are. Here's our objective statements or our goals, and then we can go through the tasks after that. So before I move into the people aspect, I just want to pause to see if anyone has a question or comment about the overall objective statements or goals, those statements of intent. No questions? All right. Yes, it is. Again, like I said, it's a little bit fuzzy. It can be hard to grasp at times in the beginning. But this is really just the first part in shifting our mindset and the way in which we create that goal. We're still going to have the tasks. We're still going to have the things that we have to do. But we're creating more of a end state vision with our goals. So the people piece, one of the key components of the people piece that we mentioned at the very beginning is to involve them in the process. This means customers, employees, any sort of stakeholder that you have. The first step with this is we will want to look at our metrics. I'm not touching at all on the metric piece, the measurables, in today's session, but it is certainly a key component of the 5-step strategic development and iteration process that I deploy with the teams that I work with. So we look at our metrics and say, what are the metrics telling us? Are they red? Are they yellow? Are they green? Are we on track? And then we ask ourselves, what needs to be adjusted? Should we shift our metrics? Maybe our metrics aren't actually measuring our progress. Say our metrics show that we're in the red behind target, but we know we've accomplished really meaningful work and we've gotten that qualitative data from our customers that they like some of the early working prototypes we've put out. So maybe the metric is off and we want to replace that with a different metric. Or maybe the metric is spot on and the work that we've done over the past quarter, month, whatever the time period is not just, it's not meeting those customer desires. It's not solving their pain points yet. So then it gives us the opportunity to shift the work that we're doing, shift what we're building, shift what we have on our to-do list on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. And then we commit and communicate. So this is where the vulnerability and transparency comes in. So it can be, as Nick mentioned, scary to say, this is the thing that I'm going to put out into the market when it is something that is completely untapped, which is why we shift to, this is how I, as an individual or my team or our company is going to impact our customers or our workforce. We're going to create a collaborative environment. We're going to create a culture where diverse opinions thrive. We're going to have a psychologically safe environment, whatever that is. And then as we make adjustments, we are transparent about where we are and how we're shifting. So I have had teams do this as frequently as weekly. I usually recommend, if this is something that you're new at or your team's new to, doing it monthly or even quarterly to say, all right, we're going to review as a team. We'll look at our metrics. We'll look at our data. We show what our metrics are. We show and tell transparently what we've been working on. And then we say, here's what we're going to do next. Here's what the data has told us. Either we're on track, we're going to keep doing this, or off track, we're going to shift to do something else. And this is what we're hoping the result will be. When the next month or next quarter runs around, you do the same thing. And then your customers and your stakeholders understand that, one, you're listening to their feedback, and the work that you actually are putting out to them is adjusting based on what they think and the data that they've been able to give you. And then two, it shows a bit of humility and vulnerability, which brings people together and creates that sense of trust. So maybe a customer says, well, I'm not super satisfied with the product yet, but because of the way that I've been involved and because of the questions that they're asking me, and because of how I've had an opportunity to see early working prototypes, I actually do feel confident that they will develop something that's going to meet my needs long term. So I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to, stick through some of the pain that might be in the build process. And the last piece I'll mention on this is that this can work for a process, a service, or an actual product. You don't necessarily have to be a tech entrepreneur who's developing cool apps or doing web design or making a physical or tangible product to use the concept of prototyping and testing. If you are a talent acquisition team member and you have certain processes or forms that candidates fill out or ways that you engage your clients, you could test that out with them. If you're an independent consultant and you have a variety of services that you're offering, you could run pilot programs or talk to some trusted friends or even previous clients and offer them a session that you're working on pro bono to get their feedback. This can really work with anything. And if you do have questions about, I don't really know what a prototype would be for my business or for my team, I am happy to help steer you in the right direction or give you some ideas. Just shoot me an email after this and we can talk a little bit more about that. So as we wrap up, I'll give you a couple of quick tips to take away with. And like I said, today focused more on the theoretical, how do we change the way we think about strategic planning to start to weave in some of those design thinking concepts. If you're interested in exploring what my 5-step continuous strategy iteration process looks like, or if you have your strategy set and have the goals and you have metrics already for the year, and you are more interested in how do you activate your team members and align and prioritize the work that you have in order to meet those strategic goals, those are other pieces that I'm happy to talk through with you, give you some more details on, and decide if some more targeted sessions for your business or your team would be a good idea. But if you are just in the starting phases and want to start incorporating some of these concepts, first, pretty easy piece is just start turning your problems into questions. A lot of times when we get in a room and we review metrics, data, goal accomplishment, we start thinking about all the reasons why we weren't able to accomplish something or why something might be behind target. It's helpful to identify that, but if you can very quickly shift to, rather than stating what went wrong, to asking, why did this happen? Why is this metric red? Why were our customers not happy with this early process improvement stage that we delivered to them? Start asking why, getting questions, and then that might help get you to the root cause a little bit faster, which can pinpoint your next tactic or your next task that you accomplish. One, I encourage you to try to expedite the process. Many of the teams that I work with are used to doing full day or half day strategic planning offsites, typically with their leadership teams. Even if sometimes they've done a little bit of customer empathy or employee information gathering before, but the big strategic planning session is usually a longer session. I challenge teams to cut that down to 2 hours or less. In an ideal situation, 1 hour or less. When I went through my OKR certification program, they said the initial strategic planning conversation, if the discovery piece is done right, should really only take 60 minutes because you have all the data there. You just need to converge on the key themes, pick out your objective statements, and then define some starting metrics. Knowing that you'll be able to iterate and change throughout the year doesn't give you the pressure that you have to get it right at the first time. Get to know your customers. They could be internal or external customers. But even if you're not in charge of strategic goal setting for your team or your organization, just start to talk to them, understand their pain points, understand their needs, desires, understand what they want or expect from you. I am always surprised at how many people don't actually know the persona of the people they work with. And it's a very easy first step to get started. And then 2, commit to iteration, or sorry, the last one, commit to iteration. So revisit this in team meetings and commit to being able to shift your goals and your metrics in order to meet that overall objective statement throughout the year. And then lastly, I'll send you the slide deck. There's a couple of other resources that you might be interested in exploring that can help you continue to learn on this concept. There's a continuously evolved toolkit that I've created that has some more in-depth knowledge around design thinking. There's also a quick 15-minute retrospective template that's really helpful for reviewing goals or honestly anything, working prototypes with your team to think about what worked well, what do we need to change, what did we learn? And then there's, if you're a podcast listener, this is one of my favorite podcasts, and a blog post that might help give you some examples of how this works. And with that, we are at our time. I'm happy to stay on for a couple of extra minutes if anyone has some questions, but I appreciate you joining, and I am welcome to also have any follow-up discussions if you want to reach out and talk to me about how this might apply to your business afterwards.
Thank you, Caitlin. Really helpful.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.